Alright, piecewise functions, we're going to read a graph and write the piecewise function from that graph. So I'm going to start from left to right. So the first function I see is, they're all linear. We have three linear functions here. And I'm going to try to find the slope and the y-intercept. So for my first graph, I'm going to write down my m and my b. And the slope I can see, I'm going to go down 2, right 1. So since it's going down, it's negative. So it would be negative 2 over 1, or just negative 2. And then my y-intercept, if I continue to go down 2, right 1, I'd have a point there, down 2, right 1, then I'd have a point here. And that y-intercept is negative 2, 3, 4, negative 4. So my first function, and I can just call this f of x if I want. My first function is negative 2x minus 4. Now I need to state what my domain is for that function. In other words, when is that true? Well, if my x value is negative 2 or less, it's going to be true for this. And the reason I know it's less than is because that arrow goes on forever. So it's going forever to the left direction. So I would say x is less than or equal to negative 2. And the reason I have the equal to sign or symbol is because that's a closed dot. So x can be negative 2 there. Alright, let's move on to the next one. So anytime I have a flat line, that's just like a y equals something, because it's always just down from the origin. And how far down is it? Down 2. So that one's always going to be y equals negative 2. Or f of x equals negative 2. And when is that true for? Well, I have an open dot here, I have a closed dot here, so that's a between inequality. So I'm going to write x in the middle. And the lowest x could be is negative 2. The greatest x could be is 3. So I'll put negative 2 here and 3 here. And now I just need to think of which one can be equal to x. X can't be negative 2, but it can be 3 because I have a closed dot. So I'm going to put my equal to symbol underneath there. Alright, we have one more function, our third one over here. And that one is linear as well. So I'm just going to look for my slope and my y-intercept. So my m and my b. And my slope, it rises 1, runs 1, and it's positive because it's increasing. So I would write 1 for my slope. And then the b, I'm going to have to extend this down. So if I go down 1, left 1, down 1, left 1, down 1, left 1, I just continue that slope until I'm at my y-axis. And that crosses the y-axis at negative 2. So then that would be y equals 1x, or just x, minus 2. And that's going to be true when x is 1, 2, 3. When x is 3, or 4, 5, 6, 3 to 6. And that's a between function as well, or between inequality. So I have x in the middle. And what did I say? 3. So 3 and 6. And can x equal 3 or equal 6? No, because we have an open dot. So I'll leave it just like that. And that's how you write a piecewise function from a graph. Now let's look at word problems. Let's say a cell phone company charges $35 a month for a calling plan. After 500 minutes are used, the plan charges 15 cents per minute. Write the function showing the monthly charge. Well, I know this is a piecewise function because there's a cost if you don't use 500 minutes, and then there's a cost if you do use 500 minutes. So there's two parts to this. So I could call this f of x or c of x, whatever I wanted to use. And I'm going to come up with two equations. So the first one is a flat rate. There's no slope. It's not rising. It's just always 35 bucks a month. So y equals 35. And when is that good for? If the domain or the number of minutes is 500 or less. So I would say x is less than or equal to 500. Because I'm only charged if I go above 500. So if I use 500 minutes, that's why it's equal to, it's still going to be good for here. And now I'm going to ask you this. What's the lowest amount of time you could talk for a given month? 0 minutes. So we're going to use 0. That's actually a between function. We cannot use negative numbers. The lowest time you could talk for is 0. The highest time is 500. And then you're going to be charged extra if you go over your minutes. So, and that is going to be the same rate. It's still 35 bucks a month. So that's my B, or my Y-intercept. And now I'm going to start with 500 minutes or more. So I would say it is 0.15, and where that 0.15 came from, it says 15 cents per minute. That's my slope. But I only want to include minutes that are above 500. So I'm going to take my highest domain from the previous function and subtract it from x. So the highest domain there was 500, and I just subtract it from x. Because I'm starting, if I use 501 minutes, then I would use this second function. And 501 minus 500 would give us 1 extra minute charged at the 15-cent rate. So that number just gets plugged in underneath, always. And then for my y-intercept, I plug in my highest domain. So I plug in the 500 again, but now I plug it into that first function. Notice there's no x to plug into, but if there was, I would have plugged it in. So it's always just 35, so that's going to be my y-intercept. So plus 35. So again, I plug in the highest domain, the 500, back into the first function, and that gives me the y-intercept for the second function. So that's where this 35 came from. And now I need to determine the domain that that's good for. The company's going to want my money, so I can talk as much as I want in that given month, for the most part. I guess the only restriction is how many minutes are in the month, but we don't need to be that specific with our answer. So we'll say that x has to be, we've already used 500, so it has to be greater than 500. It cannot be equal to 500. And that would be my domain. So if you went over your minutes, you would plug it into the second function. If you did not go over your minutes, your cost would just be the 35. So now let's add up to this question. What if we talked for 530 minutes? So to find the cost for 530 minutes, I would look at my domains to see where to plug it in. 530 is not between 0 and 500, it's greater than 500, so I'd plug it into this one. So I would do 0.15 times, plug in the 530 for x, minus 500, and then add 35. So 530 minus 500 is 30, so I'm just doing 30 times 0.15, and 3 times 15 is 45. So that would give me $4.50 plus 35, which is $39.50. So always plug it into your actual function to make sure that it makes sense. So just think you went 30 minutes over and just multiply that by 15 cents a minute, and add that to your base rate of 35. So now we can write equations from graphs, and we can solve some word problems.